Continuing on with our $50 budget series, we're going to take a look at an Emerald Amethyst aggro burn deck, but before I do that, I just want to note that the previous $50 budget blue steel resist deck that I made has jumped almost $8 in just like 3 days, so it's getting harder to build decks for around 50 bucks. We'll do our best, but we might have to increase our cap to like 55, 60 in some cases. Nonetheless though, in this version, we are pretty much spot on at 50. It was actually just under 50 a few hours ago, but it is what it is. Things are going to fluctuate, obviously. This is focused mainly on the Amethyst package, as you see on screen here. For 1-drops, we've got Pascal as our main 1-drop so that we can have evasive on him on the following turns when we drop additional characters. Olaf is just there mainly as ink, but in case you don't see a Pascal, at least you also have a 1-drop to put pressure on the opponent. You play a number of 2-drops, the Cusco Wanted Llama, the Mim Snake of course, and 4 Flynn Riders. This just helps you play on curve a little bit easier, putting a lot of pressure on your opponent or getting a favorable trade out for a draw. Ideally though, you want Flynn Rider to put even more questing pressure on board. That's why you play 4. Then in the 3-drop slot, you play Madam Mim Fox. This is probably the most expensive card in the deck, funnily enough, but it isn't a starter deck, so hopefully everybody should have this. It's a staple Amethyst card, so hopefully that brings down your overall investment cost if you were going to build this deck. Then we got 4 Sorceress, 3 Yzma without Beauty Sleep, because we're going to play 4 of the Yzma Scary Beyond All Reason, and this card has definitely come down a lot in price, and I'll kind of explain the synergy with that in just a bit. And then you have kind of what I call your endgame package, where you have goats. Merlin Rabbit is not necessarily an endgame package card, but it's just like a support card to help you keep drawing. But the goat is part of your endgame package, your Tinkerbell, your Genie on the Job, and your Yzma. These cards will help you close the game out. So the strategy of this deck is I want to get to around 11, 12, 13 lore, and I have some games that will showcase this. And then goats with the spell books, with the Bippity Boppity Boos, will close out the rest of the 9 or so lore that you need with whatever else you have on board still, so that you can continue to quest. You can close games out by turns like 5, 6, 7. It is very, very efficient. Tinkerbell is a nice endgame closer because it has evasive, but it actually comes into play where you can give one of your other characters evasive so that it can take out opponent's threat. There's a match where I'm going to show you where a Mim Snake or a Mim Fox getting evasive from the Tinkerbell will help you take out like an opposing Ray or a big evasive threat on the opponent's side, like a Genie on the Job, if you're placing up against like a mirror match. So, those things in mind, this deck is pretty effective. You play 4 friends, you play 4 Bippity Boppity Boo mainly for the goat, but also can be useful for Genie and or Yzma. And then Spellbook is just like a passive burn, so that you can kind of generate lore no matter what the situation is, and hopefully just outgrind your opponent in the aggro game. So that's the deck. Let's go ahead and take a look at some matches. Oh, before I do, yeah, only 15 on inkables and 45 inkables, so 75% of the deck is inkable, which is nice. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some matches. All right, the first match I have for you here is actually a mirror match between another Emerald Amethyst build. And the nice thing about these matches is they're usually very, very quick. The unfortunate thing is that whoever goes first has a tremendous advantage in these aggro mirror matches because tempo is everything in this match. So I immediately know as soon as this match starts, I need a way to claw back that tempo somehow. Even if I mirror my opponent's plays, which I kind of do for the first couple of turns, they are just always one step ahead because they're the first one to complete the action, right? So, but that in mind, I'm going to try to use the Mim Fox in order to try and claw back some kind of tempo later on in this match. That's kind of my only hope. The games will end very quickly, so you don't have a lot of time. And while these matches may seem fairly simple, they do really hinge on making every single correct decision because of how fast the games go. So here you can see we both have a 1-drop, we're both questing for 1. We each play a Flynn Rider, but again, my opponent has the advantage because they're able to establish their board first and get ahead in the lore first, which means when it comes down to the final quest, they're going to be able to quest before I do to win the game. On turn 3, they drop a Maleficent to draw, which gives them back the extra card, and we're going to go ahead and drop our Madam Mim Fox and bounce back to Pascal in order to take out the 2-drop Flynn Rider actually, because the extra quest for the lore I thought could make a difference in the long run, so I want to get that off field. Discarded Genie because I figured that there might be better cards to play towards the end game, but in hindsight, keeping that Genie around would have been very beneficial. The opponent does not have a friends on the other side, so they opt to crash their Maleficent into my Fox, and this kind of regains tempo for me a little bit. The opponent does end up dropping a goat and going up to 6 lore, but now we can equalize the lore by questing with our Flynn Rider. We're still behind, but we're slowly catching up. The opponent is down to 3 cards in hand, and instead of dropping a goat, I drop a rabbit to draw a card because I'm looking for my endgame package in Bippity Boppity Boo and the goat. The opponent is definitely on a different build than me though. You can see here they drop an Evasive Ray, and if I didn't have Tinkerbell and the Madam Mims in the deck, I would have no way to deal with this Ray, and it would just quest its way to game for the opponent. So you're going to see me set up the play for next turn, which is unfortunate, but nothing I can do, right? They're going to be able to quest with that Ray at least once. We're going to drop the Mim Snake and bounce back the Rabbit to draw and Ink Pascal, and then drop a second Flynn Rider. And now, assuming our Mim Snake doesn't get answered and the opponent's quest with the Ray, we have a way to out that Ray with dropping Tinkerbell on the following turn here. So the opponent is thinking for a while, and they drop Genie, and I'm like, okay, they have to target a Flynn, right? Because they're afraid of me outquesting them, and thankfully they do. And then they don't even opt to challenge my Flynn. They're just straight up trying to race me. And with the Ray, it would seem like it's the right choice. But again, they don't know that we've got that Tinkerbell that will give the Snake the evasive. And with that, we can crash. And it's actually really good that we drew an Inkable here that wasn't the GOAT, because we're going to have to ink that Snake in order to redrop Flynn Rider. And I've already calculated out, I will have game if I draw an Inkable next turn because of the GOAT Bippity Boppity Boo. And this is why this deck can be so devastating, is because what's on board right now does not look threatening for game, whereas the opponent's board is like, yeah, I'm going to be questing for game next turn, so good luck outing my whole board. I pretty much win this game, right? And we're only on 11 lore, and we're going to jump all the way up to 20 here by triple quest up to 17, drop GOAT, and then ink the Olaf. Thankfully we drew an Inkable there. Bippity Boppity Boo the GOAT to gain 1 lore and redrop it to gain the final lore to win the game. Alright, this next matchup is actually my second game against the same person. My first game that I got, I scooped, I think, turn 2, because I literally had 6 uninkables and only 1 inkable in my hand. And so I just scooped right away. So if this person somehow comes across this video, no disrespect as to why I scooped so soon into the previous game, but at least we got each other again. And I end up going second again. So in the 3 matches I played, I went second in all of them. And this is an aggro deck. You want to go first if you can. But it's good practice nonetheless to see if you can fight your way back from going second. This opponent is on an Amber, Ruby, I guess aggro deck, which is very interesting. Clearly they're using the Rapunzel into the Mother Gothel, and we just have to hope that we can out aggro them. We're not too worried about card advantage because our engine naturally generates card advantage as well as maintains an aggro aspect, and you'll see that as the match progresses here. But the opponent being on the play does have an advantage of constantly establishing their board and me having to react to it. And if you're not a control player, playing an aggro deck and trying to react to an opponent's board basically doesn't work. Like, you can see me trying to utilize the Mim Fox like I would in Ruby Amethyst to control the board state, and this card does help me gain back tempo. But as an aggro player, you just have to play your aggro game and hope it's enough to overcome the opponent. And that's why aggro decks are kind of lackluster in my opinion, is because they do really suffer when going second, but you just got to find a way to make it work. And this balance, surprisingly, does work very well. Here you can see me utilize the exact same play I did in the first game, where I used the Tinkerbell to out an evasive threat. And you can see how useful these kind of give evasive to a character cards kind of are. Peter Pan Shadow, Tinkerbell, they've come in clutch to really help stabilize the board state. I was expecting the shift Aladdin, given that the opponent inked an Aladdin earlier and opted to drop an Aladdin a few turns ago, but I was totally fine with it because look at the difference in card advantage now. We do have the Rabbit and double Friends on the other side. And at this point, the fact that I'm at 0 lore and the opponent's at 6 doesn't really matter, because I should be able to start establishing my board after this now. And I do have the utility of Bippity Boppity Boo to cycle my Genie if things do get a little rough. So first thing we're going to do is sing the Friends on the other side. The opponent clearly has no real way of interaction right now, only being on a Maui. They might have like a Be Prepared or some high cost uninkable in hand that they just can't play. But we draw into a Yzma, and we instantly Yzma into 2 rabbits and then draw a Cusco off of the actual rabbit going back. And this is why I don't like playing 4 rabbits. Like, you're literally seeing it in action right now, where I constantly talk about it being clunky. The opponent ends up just dropping an Aladdin and passing turn. We're going to go ahead and quest with this Yzma though, because I believe we're going to have the option to Bippity Boppity Boo it, which is what we're going to do. So yeah, drop rabbit here, draw a card, ink the small Yzma, quest with the big Yzma, and then once again, like, I guess this does make sense because you don't want the Maui, if you don't want to trade into the Maui just yet, This I could, there's no point in Bippity Boppity booing out the genie there, so just another draw 3, and we have like, I don't know, 9 cards in hand. The opponent has 2, and this Maui isn't doing anything right now. The opponent does reestablish a Minnie Mouse, but at this point we can start locking down the tempo of the match by dropping genies and then force the Maui to crash into the Yzma now, because we can take out the Aladdin. So we can just pretty much out the entire opponent's board here and just prevent them from questing at all, which is really strong. And then I dropped the Cusco so that I can trade into the Maui later on, which is nice. So we're going to go ahead and take out the Aladdin there, and now the opponent's going to redrop the Surfer and a small Minnie Mouse and then crash the Maui. Now in hindsight, this is actually a misplay on my part, because I should have just quested with the Cusco and forced the Maui to crash into it. But allowing the opponent's Maui to crash into my Yzma, I didn't really think that far ahead into like, oh, they could be sitting on a Rapunzel. But again, given how they were playing, it was very unlikely that they were sitting on that. So taking out the Maui with the Cusco isn't necessarily a huge misplay. It is one lower lost, but if they would have top decked a Rapunzel and been able to heal that Maui for 3, they would have drawn 3 cards and instantly been way back in this game. So it would have been safer for me to challenge that Maui with the Cusco instead of getting the 1 lore, because if they do top deck a Rapunzel, that's like their one way back into this game. So anyways, the opponent continues to play things out here. They're going to end up dropping a Tremaine, which will happily out our 1-drop 4. That's one nice thing about drawing 1-drops later on in the game, is that they can be Tremaine fodder. We are in Be Prepared range though, so I just dropped 2 cards that essentially have effects if banished, to see what the opponent wants to do. They do not have the Be Prepared, they just have Minnie Mouses, so they're going to drop everything and then pass turn. And at this point we have game, because we quest with everything. That puts us up to 19. We just hard cast the friends and hope to draw into either a goat or a spellbook. And if you've seen the deck list, you know that we play 7 of those in total. We do indeed draw the spellbook, and that's just game. So we quest for everything, drop the spellbook, and that is a GG. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Quantum is out.